Hi everyone, good evening. Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to today's edition of Crystal's Conversations. Jenny, hi, good evening. Can you help me pin the topic, please? So everyone knows what the conversation is about. I see that my guest is in the house already. Welcome, Talagbe. Give us a couple minutes. I will add you in a couple of minutes. Let's just wait for a few more people to join. In the meantime, let me say hello to my people. Oluwatosi, I see you in the house. Hey, Namdi NN, how are you? Who else? Ayatunde, hi, good evening. Hey, Lola. How's everyone doing today? How was your Sunday? How was your weekend? Mine went by very quickly. I feel like I barely had a weekend. Before I knew it's Sunday evening, and it's time to start getting ready for Monday. Are you guys excited about Monday? Okay. Hey, darling. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Thank you for joining. So today we're going to be talking about something, a topic that's pretty, pretty dear to my heart. If you know me, hi, Olivia. So if you know me at all, there's a couple of things. In fact, while we're waiting for more people to join, if you're in this house and you think you know me, anything about me, anything about Kemi, just say one or two things that you think Kemi, me, that I like, or that I'm passionate about, or that I enjoy, or that is something that's synonymous with me. One or two things. Put it in the comment section. I might have a gift for somebody if you get it right. Let me hear you. How well do you know me? How well do you know me? In the meantime, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kemi Ogunleye. I am the creator and host of Crystal's Conversations. If you are just joining, if today is your first time joining Crystal's Conversations, I'll tell you what we're all about. Crystal's is a platform, a community of women and a few good men who are on a journey to becoming our best selves. I believe that conversation, transparency, being vulnerable, those are all key tools for becoming our best selves. Those are all key tools for becoming our best selves. The more that we can talk and share our experiences, share our stories, the more we can inspire each other, we can encourage each other. The tagline for Crystal's Conversations is changing the world one conversation at a time. And I really do believe that the conversations that we have here, creating this platform, this safe space for people to be able to speak openly about their challenges, their trials, their triumphs as well. There's so many, there have been so many testimonies of how just by sharing our stories, people have been helped, people have been encouraged, people have found solutions, they found somebody to help them along the way. So that's what we do on Crystalist. So I had asked, that's me. My name is Kemi Ogunleye, like I said, and I'm the creator and host of Crystalist Conversations. I asked if people know me at all, if you have any idea of something, one or two things that I'm passionate about or that are synonymous with me, put it in the comment section. I have Lola saying writing, true, very true. And then Sarah says well-spoken people, very true. So both of those actually are kind of related to the show that we're having today. Grammar Epp. Grammar Epp. Why speaking and writing well, why it matters. And so, yes, writing is one of the things that I'm very, I passionate about. I like to write and I like to read. And well-spoken people, of course. Something else that's completely unrelated to this that I love to do is dancing, but that's a topic for another day. But yes, I like to write, but more importantly, I'm very passionate about communication. The communication is at the heart of everything that I do and everything that I am, my relationships, my the way that I navigate the world that I'm in is by communication, honest conversations. Exactly, Tonye. Honest conversations, and we can't really have honest conversations if we don't know how to communicate, if we don't know how to express ourselves properly, if we don't know how to, the right words to use, when to use those words. And communication is about verbal and non-verbal cues, right? The way that we speak to people, not just what we say, but how we say it makes, can make all the difference in the world. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today is, why does it matter how you speak, what you say, what you don't say? Why does it matter speaking well, dotting your I's and crossing your T's? Why does it matter? We live in a microwave world. We live in a world where, it's like everybody's doing text speak. We live in a society, if you're in Nigeria, from Nigeria, you understand that we also live in a society where there's very little premium placed on the skill of speaking well, doing things well, doing things excellently. We come from a society that seems to celebrate mediocrity. So there are a lot of people who may argue, who Grammar Epp? People that cannot speak English, that are not speaking well, that are not minding their P's and their Q's, they're getting ahead, excellently ahead in this society. So what is the value? So that's why I have my guest today to come talk to us about, we're going to have this conversation. Is there value in speaking well, in writing well, in good communication? Tolagbe Martin, she's here already. I'm going to add her now. I saw her request. There we go. Tolagbe, I'm adding you on without further ado. I'm just waiting for her. Hey, girl.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Feeling a bit poorly earlier today, so
Yeah, I'm
very well. So I have to say a special thank you to her for still coming on, because when I spoke to her earlier today, she sounded very congested.
Yes, I am. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really looking forward to this, actually. And I want to actually just congratulate you, Kemi, because the conversations you host on here are extremely important. Women need these safe spaces to share, connect, to give ourselves a little bit of encouragement. There's nothing like knowing that you're not the only person walking a particular journey. It's much easier. There's that proverb about how you can go much further together. So thank you.
Thank you, Tolagbe. Thanks for sharing the vision, and thank you for agreeing to come on the platform. I never take it for granted. When I ask people if they will come and they say they will come, I never take it for granted. So thank you. We're going to be talking today about Grammar Epp. Now, before we get into the conversation, you'll be wondering, okay, why is Tolagbe the person that I brought on to talk about this? And it's going to be clear in a moment if you don't already know her. If you do know her, then of course you know why she's here. But let me just read a little bit of her bio quickly before I let her introduce herself. So Tolagbe Martins is a communication and strategy professional with extensive public and private partnership experience. She's drawing on a varied career path spanning healthcare, aviation, and manpower outsourcing. She has deep logistics and operational startup experience. She's worked on change management, stakeholder engagement, as well as flagship municipal and infrastructure projects at the subnational level. Tolagbe holds a BSc in psychology and philosophy and an MSc in organizational social psychology from the London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE. She's a prolific writer and speaker, And she runs, now to the crux of the matter, she runs a private coaching service for executives who want to improve their writing and speaking. Her coaching service is known as the Grammar Ministry. And, you know, if you follow Tolagbe at all, you would have seen some of her videos, the little videos that she does, or the little nuggets that she shares about, you know, she'll just take a word here or two words and kind of tell us what is the right usage for this word, or why this word that we're using when we haven't been using it properly. And I know a lot of people have benefited from her wealth of experience in this topic, or on this topic. So Tolagbe, welcome again. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We have quite a few people in the house who are keen to know a bit more about you. Can we know you? Can we know you?
Well, you've given my whole biography now. Now, like, I'm actually shy. I was like,
one that is not here, the under one,
I was like, shame me no.
No, it wasn't you. Can we know you, please?
Absolutely. So, of course, my name is Tolagbe. I am a grammar nerd. I love language. I love to communicate, and I find that I am excited by etymology, which is what we talk about when we talk about the root of words, the meanings, where they came from. I speak Yoruba relatively fluently. So again, I love how we transliterate. I just love language and everything that has to do with it. I was very fortunate to spend a lot of time with my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, who was an English teacher and a headmistress. And some people will know her because she's the famous Mrs. Doherty of University of Lagos Staff School, who was headmistress, English teacher for founding deputy headmistress, later headmistress. And so anyone in the Unilag community tends to have an idea of who my grandmother was. And my sister and I were fortunate enough to spend considerable amounts of time with her when we were in primary school. Because of course we had to go to staff school. There was no other choice. So we would go to hers after school. We would spend a lot of time with her because her home was very close to the University of Lagos campus. And what that did for us was spending time with her really did instill a love for language. We would recite poetry. She would make us read aloud. She would give us reading exercises, comprehension exercises. So we were doing this for fun. Remember, there are no iPads. There's nothing else. So TV is only from 4 till 5 o'clock. So exactly, TV didn't start till 4 and then ended at about 5:30. So what else are you doing? So you're reading. So she really was really helpful for instilling that particular strong foundation in initially my sister and I, and latterly my brother and 2 of my cousins who were old enough, born early enough for her to be able to help out in this way.
Okay, great. So you've kind of already preempted my next question, which was, because you described yourself as a grammar nerd. I describe myself as a grammar nerd, self-confessed grammar nerd, because people have called me that long enough, and eventually I decided I own it. I'm a proud card-carrying member of the Grammar Nerd Society. So have you always been a grammar nerd?
Absolutely. And I've got 2 friends who are actually on here, Lara and Bisola. And there's this story that we tell about our first couple of days in boarding school. I went to Adesoye College. And so, we're all far away from home. I don't know if you remember, but there was this range of shampoos at the time, St. Ives. So St. Ives had this shampoo, which was supposed to have jojoba oil in it, right? And
I already know where this story is going.
Exactly. So I pick up the bottle and I say, oh my gosh, this is nice, jojoba oil. And they say, jojobake. What's this one saying? And literally, I am teased for probably like the first 2 weeks of school. Everyone, as I'm passing, they're like, that's the jojoba girl. And then I forget actually how it transpired that everyone got to realize that it was actually not that it was that I was correct in saying jojoba and everyone else was wrong in saying jojoba. And 2 people came back and said, look, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. We just thought that you were straight. So I guess I've always had those kind of strange experiences where, which can often be seen as, oh, this one is oversabi or ITK or, and so that's a classic example. So that I was probably 10 and a half then. So at least then that's a standout grammar nerd moment.
Yeah, grammar nerd moment. And you know what? I've got to share one as well because you just reminded me of an experience I had when I started. So I went to Queen's College. My probably first day from one as well, or GS1. So I must have been about 11. Maybe first day, at least the first week of school. We were in an English class, and I don't remember if I was one reading. Somebody else was reading, or the teacher was reading even. And she pronounced the word Bough. And she said bow, and I couldn't help myself. I spoke up. I said, no, it's not bow, it's bow. And the whole class turned to me. I was like, no, it's not bow, it's bow. Bough is bow. I'm like, no, it's bow. And the teacher, of course, is standing in front of the class and is saying, I actually corrected the teacher.
Yeah, how could you?
How could I? And so they brought out the teachers, bring out the dictionary, and the dictionary has the
phonetics. Exactly.
So I remember it was my friend Simi who read it, brought out the dictionary as triumphantly, it's bow. And at that moment, I think my fate was sealed.
Yeah.
As definitely, okay, this one is a grammar nerd, but also they are good. My teacher was a good sport about it because she could have really decided that.
She could have been, yeah.
She could have, but yeah, so there you go. So I guess we have similar experiences in that case. But you've kind of taken it from a personal, this is you, Tolagbe writes well, Tolagbe speaks well, Tolagbe is particular about language and communication, but you've sort of elevated that now into a ministry.
Absolutely.
Literally speaking. So at what point did this evolve for you beyond, okay, well, at least I speak well and my children speak well, to, no, I've got to, shall I say, help without patronizing. I have to, being patronizing, I have to do something about
this. I have to minister.
I
have to take on this vocation and calling.
Yes. At what point did that?
So it actually, so obviously I've always sort of commented on things, and especially Twitter is really great for this kind of is the best medium for this kind of expression, actually. Technology with like Instagram has come along, but Twitter has always been there for, as a microblogging, you can just talk quickly about topics. Right. And so I was getting a lot of informal requests. And I mean, for context, I've always done contract copy editing and proofwriting and proposal reviewing, as I'm sure you have to. People bring them in, so that has always gone on in the background. Whether or not I advertised it, that's something that my network would frequently reach out to me to help with, and sometimes it would be paid, other times it would be unpaid, but that was very much going on. And you start to realize, especially when you're fixing other people's writing, that the same mistakes keep popping up, the same trends, you see the same gaps. So when the pandemic hit, I thought, and everyone was at home, I launched by offering a series of free classes to people, asked them to reach out on topics that they had struggled with or that they were struggling with. And I ended up getting about 12 people. And I ran sort of half-hour Zoom sessions with them, just going through specific things. So people struggle with will and would. People struggle with tenses, subject-verb agreements. A number of people wanted to just go through pronunciations and speaking words that, they found tricky. Someone actually wanted to work on her H factor, so we did some exercises on that. So that really did, it was, I think that time we all had a form of reckoning and saying, look, what's really important, right? And anyway, we're all stuck at home, So it was very easy to organize, and I ended up doing that. But most importantly, I got the feedback to realize that there were these gaps, and people, sometimes they're not being difficult. They really don't know. And so that's what kickstarted
the grammar ministry.
Absolutely.
And so, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I've kind of always been, I haven't been sure if people place a value on this, because, you know, like you, I've been asked, you know, why don't you should be teaching classes. I'm like, nobody will pay in this country. I don't think anybody's going to pay to come. First of all, how many people want to admit that, you know, they have an issue in this regard, or that they can learn more, or they could be better, or maybe there's room for improvement there, one. And two, even if they feel that they do, they probably feel like they're getting on well enough as they are. So why should I pay somebody money to teach me? Come and pay me, let me pay. They will sign up for classes for teach me how to make 1 million naira, teach me how to what do you call it? Teach me how to blow and all of that. But I didn't think that people would actually pay money or sign up, even if it's free. That would people even place a value on this to come. So it's great to hear that, you know, you started this the way you started, and that immediately there was a reception for it, because that sort of shows me that the gap is there, not because people don't want to do better. It's just that they don't know better. So what is the grammar ministry?
Okay, so it really works in two ways. One is because it's a ministry, and honestly, we talk about ministry in the marketplace. We talk about being in the kingdom. I really feel that, and we talk about you know, when we talk about talents, this is something I am extraordinarily good at. I mean, I'm not saying that in a sort of arrogant way. It just, I realize that people struggle with this particular thing and I don't. You know what I mean? I think one also gets to a particular time. I turned 40 in the pandemic. And you realize you've been working for a solid, I realized I've been working for almost 18 years at this point, right? So you've learned a lot of things. And the reason why I talk about my varied background in my short bio is just because what has happened is you've learned how different sectors need to communicate, right? And how it's about getting the messaging right for the particular audience. Not everyone needs to be a Nobel laureate or a poet laureate or an orator. No, that's not it at all. So what I found was there were certain tools that could make life a lot easier. So at the moment, I run programs for, I say, aspiring C-suite executives, right? People who realize that because perception is important, and they may have sort of hit a little bit of a ceiling because they haven't quite been able to scale the gap of being able to communicate all the work, all the experience they have. You know what I mean? They've probably been working the same length of time that I have. They've picked up so many things. They're subject matter experts, but it doesn't come across either in writing or in their speech. So to some extent, you've hit a ceiling. And the only way to break through that is by communicating properly.
Right.
You know, when we talk about skills for the future, 21st century skills, everybody keeps talking about storytelling. You know, it's not once upon a time. No, it's about being able to convey whatever your mission, your vision is with clarity to achieve your objective. So those are the first sort of people to whom my service has become quite important. Then I'm also finding that young graduates, fresh graduates out of school, you need to learn how to write a proper letter. You need to know how to write a proper email. You need to know how to structure a report. So-called soft skills, like graduate soft skills. And then finally, I'm working with a lot of small and medium business owners who need to scale and to automate some of their processes. If you have to check every proposal going out, and if you have to check every letter going out, and if you have to compose all the WhatsApp messages that you are gonna have a problem. And so those are the three sort of, within the target market, those are my three classes. But of course, I still have the videos, and I know I haven't done many this year for a number of reasons, but not least because I've actually been busy trying to actually build this out in addition to life, day job, pandemic, etc. But the other thing is also trying to condense, whether it's a homonym or a frequently mixed up word. You know, our attention span collectively has become very short. So you're trying to condense something into 2 minutes, so that it is snackable and shareable. And that actually does take some planning.
Yeah.
So they'll be coming back, but I realized that the secret is to actually do them in batches, maybe film about 6 at the same time. And I've recently been able to hire my first team member. So that's also helped, because they're, you know, so that creating the content, making sure, keeping the appointments and the scheduling, that has become a lot easier. So that's how it works presently.
Okay, great. So, before I continue, sorry, I forgot to say the house rules. If you've got questions, which I'm sure there will be a lot of questions for Tolagbe, please put them in the Q&A box. There's a question sort of icon. If you look at the bottom of your screen, just put your questions there. And towards the end of this conversation, we'll take questions for her. So yeah, now to the crux of the matter. The title of this, or the topic for today, is Who Grammar Epp. So really, doesn't matter, Tolagbe. You know, in Nigeria, we say idea is need. Do I really have to? As long as you understand me now, you shall know what I'm trying to say. Why do I have to? Why do I have to be precise? Why do I have to be correct? Why does grammar have to? Why do I have to have subject verb agreement? You know what I'm saying. I know you know what I'm saying. Can't we just leave the matter here? Why does it matter?
Okay, well, sometimes I don't know what you're saying. So first of all, I don't know what you're saying. But okay, let's talk about what are you trying to achieve in any form of communication, right? We talk in marketing speak, we talk about a call to action. By the end of this, I want the person to do, know, say, believe this. Okay, so anything you're writing, that's the first question you're asking yourself, right? You're asking who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay, and that's for a specific reason, because you have an objective. Okay, so whether it's to make more sales, whether it is to get people to join your multi-level marketing scheme, whether, I don't know, whether it's to call souls, like, what are you trying to achieve? You've got to get the messaging right. And this is why I will agree that not all of that will necessarily be done in so-called Queen's English, okay? And I think it's important to set the context. I'm not saying that you need to blow flair. I'm not saying you need to have a certain accent. Not at all. But you need to be clear. You need to be precise. So, a specific way that I talk about this is communicating with clarity, so that you are speaking to your precise audience. And so when we talk about in Nigeria, does that really exist anymore with the way the world has gone? Could you sit here and be offering a service that could scale across time zones, so you could actually earn some dollars, so that your naira stops being like a joke? I mean, these are things, and I mean, grammar can help you to do that. Okay?
Grammar can help.
Grammar helps you to earn outside of Nigeria. I don't know. I feel like that in itself is probably like an important factor right now, right?
It down to the naira and the kobo.
No, because I found that with Nigerians, you do have to get to that. That's the brass tacks of what people want to hear. So most importantly, we live in a global world, right? We used to have this advantage. Okay, my grandmother actually explained something to me, because there is a generation of Nigerians who did speak really well, who used language really well. And I say this with every sense of humility. And please millennials, don't come for me, because it's not so much about a generational thing. It's just the same decay that we've had in Nigeria across every sphere, every sector. It has happened in the educational industry as well, right? Nigerians used to have a massive advantage. A lot of us left secondary school, got to wherever we went, and people were always taken aback. And then, of course, some of it is microaggressions. Oh, you speak so well. But the truth is, we had that facility, and it came because we were being taught in a specific way. So the curriculum at the time, and this is when I say that I'm a grammar nerd, Kemi, only you and I will find this particularly fascinating, but I'm just using it for context. The curriculum at the time was designed to teach English as a foreign or second language, right? But then we were all speaking it, reading it, and as natives. So what that did is you got the double reinforcement,
and
right?
you got technical.
Exactly. You got the technical foundation, and then you also got it from an immersion perspective. That's why you would get to somewhere like the UK, and they would know the words, but they wouldn't know why. You had that advantage at the time. Okay? So, but unfortunately, what has happened now is the technical knowledge is gone or misremembered. I think it's probably more precise. And then around us also, the standards have dropped. So you're meeting people who almost can't express themselves in any language. It's not about grammar, it's about clearly thinking and being able to convey whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So that's who Grammar Epp, okay?
Who Grammar Epp, right down to Grammar Epp your bank account, right?
Absolutely, it's the bottom line.
The bottom line is the bottom line. But you know what? I wanted to just touch on something that you kind of alluded to earlier, but we didn't really get into before I pivot a little bit. But I think the thing about grammar, when we talk about who Grammar Epp, or when we're talking about speaking well or writing well or good communication, people tend to think, oh, you're saying if I don't speak like the Queen, then look, if you love languages, like you said you do, I love language as well. So I'm also particular about people speaking well in Yoruba or whatever it is, whatever language you're speaking, please speak it well, And I actually love language like you. I love words, and I love how words fit together. And even in my own, I'm Yoruba. So in Yoruba now, for example, we have about 6 different words for destiny or fate. And each of those words conveys something slightly different. It's the same thing in English language. I think it must just start with an appreciation for words and what they mean and how they can help you navigate the world and how they can help you sort of have better experiences and relationships and meet your goals and your aspirations. So it's really not about English or not English.
Exactly.
Whether Yoruba, if it's Olamide rapping in Yoruba, if it's Fino rapping in Igbo.
Honestly, people are blown away by the preciseness, by the use of puns, by the use of proverbs.
Exactly. So
the richness of any language.
Of any language. Exactly. So I think that it forms the bedrock. Once you can begin to have an appreciation for the richness of language and for words and for why words matter, then I think you're already halfway into the journey, or halfway along. But I said I wanted to pivot a little bit because we've been talking about the value of communication and speaking well, but we've really contextualized it in maybe business and in the professional environment. I wanted to switch a little bit to say, even in your personal relationships, in your, how you're with your children or your friends or your in-laws or whatever it is, why does this matter? How does it help you in those? And before I let you answer that, I will add a bit further context. So for those of you who watched last week, last week I had two guests on the show, a mother and a daughter, come to talk about a teenager and her mom come to talk about mental health struggles. The teenager had some mental health struggles. Her mother had supported her through it all, and it was the show resonated with. I'm still getting I'm still getting the feedback I know from that. But where I'm going with this is I'm planning to bring on either next week or the week after as a mental health expert or professional who specializes in young people. So he'll be on the show either next week or the week after. So I was talking to him today and I was telling him that he was asking me, so who are you having on today? And I said, oh, we're pivoting completely today from, last week we had that really heavy topic. And so this week we're talking about just communication, and good communication. And so, yeah, and then I said next week, then maybe we'll go back to, but then he stopped and he said, actually, I think it's a continuum. I don't think that you're pivoting at all. I think that this is part of the conversation you were having last week, because at the foundation of a lot of issues around mental health struggles, especially when it comes to young people, he says it begins with how are the parents talking to them when they're young? What words are they using? How are the parents giving their children the tools to be able to express what's going on in their heads, what's going on in their minds? Up until all the way up to, okay, there's an issue and you're going in to see a doctor or the GP, and if you don't have if you can't communicate properly, you can't even explain to the GP what exactly is going on. So he said it is important even in this regard. So I just wanted to bring that home, to contextualize that, to say this thing is more than, yes, we're saying, it helps you in business and in professionally. It helps you in navigating your entire life. I wanted to bring that back to say, when we're still on the question of who Grammar Epp, can you please give us a little bit more around that?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And I think it's very important. And I just want to touch on two things that you just raised. I mean, the first is when you talk about using the appropriate words to describe sensation. So a lot of people will go to the doctor. For example, you have abdominal pain. Full disclosure, both my parents are doctors, so I didn't go to the doctor. I just used to tell mommy or daddy. But here's the point, right? And I would get asked, what kind of pain? Is it cramping? Is it griping? Is it heavy? Do you feel like you need to use the bathroom? Do you feel like you need to throw up? Right? So you would have to get quite granular with the description of the pain, so that could help them make a diagnosis. Okay. Absolutely. So what does that mean? It means you have to have the vocabulary to do so. Now, with children and parenting, I recently became the mom of a teenager because my son turned 13. I can't believe it, but that happened. I don't know where the time went, but here we are.
There we go.
But most importantly, what has happened with my sons, I have two sons, is I've always tried to get them to use the appropriate words to describe what's going on. Okay, so an example of this is, you don't ask children, how was school today? Because they're just going to say fine. And you're not going to get any information out of them. So you say things like, did anything funny happen today? And then they can tell you if something funny happened. Did anything sad happen today? And then they can tell you that. Was there a good moment? Was there any bad moment? And you have to use adjectives because you're trying to train associations between feelings and words. And this is important for later on, right? I keep saying grammar is a tool. A vocabulary is like having a big, container, a toolkit, a box of things you can use, implements you can use to achieve your objectives. So as parents, if we are deliberate about listening and speaking to our children, we will give them the tools to be able to express what is going on. And this will allow them to navigate future relationships, right? My younger son the term has ended. So, the school year is over. And in September, he goes to primary school.
Okay.
He starts primary 1. He's finished with nursery and kindergarten. He's a big boy now. So he came up to me and said, Mama, I'm so scared about September. So, I curbed my instinct to laugh and to dismiss his fears. Not in a mean way, but I'd have gone, for goodness sakes, because he's a little dramatic like someone else. But, hey. And I said, you're not scared. You sound like you're nervous and excited. Right? Excited to be going upstairs because he won't be on the ground floor anymore. And nervous. So when I said you're nervous, he goes, yes, what if they don't like me? And then I had to point out that it's going to be the same people because it's all of you going together. You're not going to meet new people. And he hadn't realized that. So he was like, oh. But this is the point. We drew that out, this small experience. So he now has those tools to use to describe something else. And this is it's an incremental process. You do it with them over time, and you find that later on they'll be able to talk to you in a way that you guys can actually achieve something. And what are you trying to achieve? What's the call to action here? A healthy parent-child relationship, which at some point should develop into a friendship. And this is the only way that you can build that.
Absolutely. And I think in grounding this conversation, because when we started off, or even when I put the flyer out, I think it may have come across as just a bit esoteric,
and highfalutin.
But it really does, in grounding it to why it matters and who it ep your children, it ep your in-laws. But even if you don't have children, or if you're not married, I find that a lot of people struggle sometimes with their interpersonal relationships with friends. They're always lurching from one disagreement to the other, from one conflict to the other. And when you sit down and you sort of start stripping away at what it is an issue of a breakdown in communication, or communication, you're saying one thing, somebody else is hearing something else.
Exactly.
And this is why, again, why words matter. Why would you choose scared versus nervous versus anxious versus trepidatious?
Exactly.
Which word would you use when and why? But we've been talking a lot about sort of spoken words or written words, but we also have nonverbal communication, right? So communication, I remember reading a long time ago that communication is 90% nonverbal, and 10% is actually what you say or what you write. 90% of it is how you say it or how you write it. So what about nonverbal cues like expression and posture? What role do those play in effective communication?
Okay, so thank you. That's actually a really great question. And not just because I'm saying that as you're supposed to say it's a really good question, but it actually is. And I'll tell you why. Understandably, most of my clientele tend to be women. That's because women are quite deliberate about their self-improvement. And they need to be, because of the way that our society is structured. We're already at a fundamental disadvantage. Okay, so we don't have the old boys network. We don't have that particular privilege. So I find that women tend to be very focused on their self-improvement, and they take steps quite deliberately to do so. And something that has come up in the cohorts of C-suite executives in particular, but also small business owners, is the power of silence. you're in a room, you're negotiating, you're across the table from someone, or you're in a meeting and everyone is talking, sometimes you have to battle the urge to fill the silence. We are conditioned from this is like gender conditioning. We've been socialized to be like, oh, I'm so sorry, oh, pardon me, oh, you know what? Sometimes just be quiet, because whoever talks first is going to lose the battle
or lose the leverage.
And I'm telling you that this goes against all our conditioning. For those of us who are Yoruba in the room, the need to shake pele is almost like visceral. And yet it's something you have to put aside if you are like doing the full, if you're bossing up. You have to sometimes be sterner than you would ordinarily be. Your tone and balancing that with, again, socialization might mean, for example, that you go very quiet when you are trying to make a point. You're very precise. You pitch your voice, you modulate your tone so that you don't get emotional or high pitched, and then you can be pigeonholed as a hysterical or emotional female. So that's really where I find that non-verbal cues are really, really important. They are very important in this gendered issues, because it's so easy to get pigeonholed. It's so easy to get worked up, so easy to get emotional, in high stress situations. So learning to be very deliberate. Margaret Thatcher, for example, ended up having elocution, not just to sound a little sort of posher, but also to help her modulate her tone so that she wouldn't get high-pitched and squeaky, which most of us do, right? So she had to learn to speak, like 2 or 3 decibels below where she would ordinarily speak, just so that she could convey that air of authority and certainty. And then learning to end your sentences and to come back down. A lot of us, we tend and we leave it kind of open-ended. Learning to be precise. So those are just examples of how it goes beyond grammar per se, but it's still very much about how you're communicating. And the thing is, like when I'm talking to people about reading aloud and verbal communication, I remind them that a comma is a chance to draw a breath, to pause. A semicolon is, a longer breath or longer pause. And a full stop, obviously, is a full period poo. So that's important, again, and that's why it's important to have written it properly or organized the thoughts properly so that you can actually convey the message in an appropriate way.
I think that's what you said is so key, even in just sort of getting people to think about, your tone and your
pitch.
Your pitch, thank you. Your tone and your pitch and all of that. But also, I think it's also part of communication. Communication is a two-way street, right? It's not just you blurting out and walking away. The other person has to have received and understood what you're trying to say for communication to be complete. But also vice versa, are you able to read other people as well, as part of communicating? Because when you're communicating, you're not communicating by yourself. You're in a room with somebody else or with more than one person, and you have to be able to read the room, listen to tone, listen to pitch. So what do you say? How does this also, in terms of learning it, in a sort of systematic way, in which the way you put it in the grammar ministry, how does this also help you be, because I guess what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is communication is not just about speaking, it's also about listening. How does it help you be a better listener?
So you see, there's something called active listening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is you're listening to understand, as opposed to what most of us do, which is listen to reply. You know, someone say something, you already got your own anecdote ready,
Yeah, like
you've
this.
already got
Yeah,
your
like
own
this.
example ready. You're like, exactly. So listening to understand would mean that even if you didn't have a rejoinder or a counter ready, it's got to be informed by the information you've just received. You know, otherwise you're not speaking to the point that's being made. And the most effective leaders, bosses, are the people who can very quickly adapt to the circumstances around them. And one of the key ways to do that is by paying attention, actively listening.
Absolutely perfect. Spot on, active listening. And again, in maybe grounding this a little bit more, we're talking about, and I've worked in professional settings or personal settings. If you're not a good listener, if you're not a good, if you can't pick up the cues, if you're not an active listener, if you can't speak properly, you will find that a lot of times you see people who are, I don't know why, nobody gets me, or they just, everywhere you go, nobody likes you, only you, nobody likes you. Haters everywhere, only you. I'm asking haters in the office, I'm asking haters at home, everybody is a hater. And then when you start to ask questions, you realize that the way that you come across, or like you said, so instead of active listening, you're listening to reply. You're not letting people get a word in. You're not letting them, feel like they've been heard. You're running, you are monopolizing the entire conversation. So I just think this is so important. I can't stress it enough, this whole conversation that we're having. But what is one thing, we've spoken about a lot of things today already. What is one thing that people can begin to do today to improve their communication skills?
Okay, so we've talked about them. One is actually to listen, and the other is to be very clear-minded about your objective. Okay, you have to know what am I trying to get out of this, and that's why it's a ministry. That's why it's beyond grammar, because I'm trying to help you live your best life, right? And achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. It just so happens, like many things, you've got to have a particular medium to do this with, and so what I have found through like my myriad of experience, whether it's peer mentoring groups, working with women generally, I find you've got to use something, must be the medium for self-improvement. And if it is improving your communication, whether it's written or spoken, you will see that ripple effect in every other aspect. Okay. So if you decided that I'm going to actively listen, I'm going to give myself an active listening challenge for 30 days. I promise, you're going to see it. If it's, I'm going to read, I don't read, I'm going to read a chapter a day, again, you're going to find that that's really helpful. And I mean, read for pleasure. I recommend fiction. Like they're motivational books, they have their space, but there's something about fiction, the use of literary devices, whether metaphors, similes, allegories, very helpful for giving you these tools. The tools to help you in everything else. So that's what I would say. I'd say pick an aspect and work on it.
Okay.
Not everyone, and as I said, not everyone's going to be a poet. It might be journaling. It might be just writing down how the day was. It might be affirmation in the morning, saying this is what I want my day to be like. Envisioning that. There's a reason that one of the key tools for like neuro-linguistic programming, self-actualization, is they ask you to describe the future self, the self you're trying to get to. And they ask you to be very granular about the description. What can you smell? what does the office look like? How is your hair? Or you're on the beach. What does the sand feel like between your toes? How can you do that if you don't have the vocabulary to do it? You have to have the words now. If you don't have the words, how are you going to do it?
You do it.
And they have to be your words. I can't state that enough, right? That's sometimes the gap, because you have taken on a persona that's not genuine or authentic to you. It has to be you. That's why you find that some people say they can only pray in their native tongue, or they worship in their native tongue, mother tongue. We certainly don't like native, mother tongue. Exactly. That's sometimes the reason, because there's a depth of emotion that is so tightly connected to that.
Right.
So again, I'm all for authenticity. That's one of the reasons I'm glad you helped to establish my chops as a bona fide grammar nerd of 30 years and counting, right? Because that's the point.
That's the point.
And it's funny, because when you are this authentic self, that's what resonates with people. So, when you talk about someone who's always nobody understands you, it's because there's a falseness. It's coming across, and people can see it. So they don't connect with that. If you are your true self, if you bring your real true self to things, people connect with that.
People connect with it. So you said active listening, developing your actors. I asked you what one thing that people can do. You actually gave us bonus. So you gave, the first thing is, developing your active listening skills. And then the second thing was picking up one thing and doing it, for an extended period. So maybe it is just for the next 30 days, I'm going to read one chapter a day, or I'm going to journal or something. That, doing those two things simultaneously will help you begin to improve your communication skills exponentially. So that's for us. How can we help our young people? You spoke a little bit about what you do with your children. How can we help our young people? And when I say not even your children, but if you've got young people in your office, or how can you help them, or how can we help them improve their communication skills as well?
So I actually just ran something for young graduates, interns, and honestly, the best thing is some exercises, verbal exercises, where you ask them to describe. I know one we talked about, for example, was I asked them what they did for fun, what their hobbies were. And we sort of unpacked it. Nothing substitutes for the kind of cheesy team building activities. There's a reason that's what they're there for. And you can actually achieve multiple things with the same activity. It could serve as a team bonding exercise, but it would also give you the opportunity to allow people to practice speaking. An exercise I did with a group of corporate people was ask them to do a sample business email to their target customers, right? And that was all I said. And everybody went off to do it for their industry. Now imagine if you run a team and you got them to do that kind of exercise. It serves a number of purposes. It's brainstorming, but it's also a chance for you to correct their writing. It's also a chance for you to be sure that they've bought into the brand vision. And you probably get something that will have been co-created by everyone, and then they can take ownership of it going on. I think bosses have to be teachers. I really think you can't outsource that to other people. Leaders have to teach.
Leaders have to teach and have to model what it is they want to see.
Absolutely.
And as I say that out loud, it actually just clicked to me that the same thing at home. You
have to model the behavior.
You have to model it.
Children do what you do, not what you say.
So if it's important to you, it will be important to them. If you say to your child, like you said earlier, not asking closed questions, but asking them open-ended questions to encourage them to be able to express themselves and to use words. I think if you do that, with them, then automatically you are developing a child a young person, someone into a young person or a human being who just knows how to communicate. You're going
And
to say,
specifically with tantrums, there's the tantrum time, which
mm,
is probably from about 2 till about maybe 6, right?
mm,
Tantrum time is important because you have to say, no, baby, use your words. What's the matter?
mm-hmm,
So tell me what is wrong.
mm,
It cannot just be, stop shouting, go to your room, I'll beat you.
mm,
You're just creating, honestly, like,
mm,
you're just creating future problems for yourself. You are kicking the can down the road.
mm,
In real talk, you
mm,
have to be able to understand that this is the time to get it across to your young person
mm.
that you need to use your
Yeah,
words. This is
absolutely.
otherwise how we end up with people who are putting fists through the wall, people who are breaking things, grown people throwing chairs, throwing tables, because they've never learned to use their words. And I mean, I can't, express how critical that is for relationships, for success, for anything. So I know you're upset. Take a deep breath and try and explain. And they may not be able to explain the first pass. They may not be able to explain the second pass. But what you can't do is use your hands. Hands are not for hitting. What you also can't do is, yell at people or be violent,
Things. Oh,
Exactly. Deep
and I think to add
breaths
that,
and use your words.
you use your words, and I think again the corollary to that again is going back to active listening. Is when you tell your child use your words as a parent or whoever it is you are having a conversation with, when you say to somebody, so tell me what is wrong, or tell me, you've got to also be listening. And because if the person tells you this is how I'm feeling, and you are dismissive, or you don't take it seriously, or then immediately you've shut, not only have you shut down the conversation that day, but you've also sent the message that there's no point in me expressing. So when you tell your child, tell me what's wrong, be prepared to hear what they are saying, to really listen, because many times for us as parents and as human beings, we're not, we have a problem with really listening, especially when what you are hearing is not what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lamde says when we're not on the set of Real Housewives, exactly. I
Exactly.
think that's in reference to throwing tables and
Throwing things,
punching.
when you're throwing tantrums and
Exactly.
breaking things and all of that. Me, I'm very, I always say that. When I see people breaking things, I'm like, your own things. Who is going to, first of all, who's going to fix this mess? You are by your own self, are going to go and take broom and dustpan and clean this. Then two, you've destroyed your own things. I can't understand it. I'm just it's better, it's cheaper, and it's more effective. Just use your words.
Absolutely. But speaking of that, there are 2 words that shouldn't come up in interpersonal relationships. And those are always and never.
Never.
I am very insistent. It's the first thing you can do. You don't tell a loved one or an important one that you always do this or you
Or you
never
never
do
do
that.
this.
Like,
Absolutely.
just X them from your vocabulary, delete them in that context.
Absolutely.
Because it's so important to, if you genuinely want the person to change, then you cannot be so absolute about a particular action. And I think it's also very helpful to talk about things in terms of how you feel. So it is, when you do this, I feel this. Because you have to start with the assumption that the person is not trying to get you or out to get you. And you have to start with the assumption that this communication, the objective is for us to change or to forge a new path. So you can't tell an important person that you always do this or you never do that. It is more about, when this doesn't happen, I feel this way. Or when this happens, I feel this way. If honestly, always, never. And with children in particular. Because again, you are nurturing something. And those kinds of words can damage, can stunt you know,
Yeah. Somebody
forever.
says key point here. And I think it's absolutely a key point. Absolutely. I mean, don't say, X always, X never.
Yeah.
And the reason obviously is that once you have always and never, there's no room in there for change. There's no room for nuance. There's no room for
You've actually, what you've done is you've boxed
yes,
yourselves in.
Boxed yourself in, and you've boxed the other person in. And once people feel boxed in, they immediately become defensive.
Yeah,
so,
and also self-defeatist. Well, since I always do this,
yeah,
then why should I try?
Exactly.
Since I've never, like, imagine talking to a relationship of 10 years and I say you never. So wow.
So
in a decade, I have never made you happy.
Yeah.
Wow.
So then why are we here? Immediately, it just takes the thing from 0 to 100. Immediately, it's like I said, it means the person then becomes defensive. That's so it's an attack. They take it as an attack, and what do you do when you are attacked? You defend.
You retreat or you defend yourself.
Yes.
Neither of which are the objectives you want.
Exactly. Okay, yes, Lamide said assume best intentions. That's something else that you said as well, which I think is so key.
That is actually something that I did this course at Georgetown on successful negotiation. And it's so crazy how that was actually probably the biggest takeaway, which is when everybody comes to the room with the best intentions, the outcome, the global outcome is actually better. Everyone's going to walk away with the largest slice of the pie when you come with effectively clean hands and a clean heart.
The lawyers in the room, they will tell us that he who will come to equity must come with clean hands.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's so key is you assume that the person has good intentions. Again, in talking about interpersonal relationships, if you're having a problem with a friend, if you have an issue with a friend, somebody has done something to you, or a colleague, assume that the person did not wake up that day and say,
honestly,
how am I going to piss Dolagwe off today? What am I going to do to piss her off? So I think if you assume the best intentions, then you get you get better outcomes. Now we've gone to.
Thanks, Lamide.
Thank you, Lamide. We've kind of gone into where I wanted to sort of round this off before I get to the practical side of it. But we're talking now about, critical, we've gone from communication to negotiation to, how this helps your aspirations and why it matters. Draw the straight line for me or for us, Tolagbe, between writing well, speaking well, and living well. Communication, can it really change your life? How you communicate? Can it change the world? If you choose to describe some people as, why do we describe some people as expatriates and some people as immigrants? Why do we describe some people as terrorists and some as bandits? Why do we use the words that we use? Why do some people use certain words that they use? Why does it matter? What is the dotted line between your words and your outcomes?
Okay, so in our personal worlds, right, we've said taking the time to be very clear-minded about what you're trying to achieve means taking the time to figure out exactly how you want to communicate it. There is no way that if in your personal life you are communicating with your immediate circle, in your workplace, you're fostering an atmosphere of adequate communication, and you're achieving your business goals, that you are not positively impacted as an individual. Okay? Striving for excellence, striving for a higher standard of everything means that overall you're raising the bar and you're raising your game. I do not see in any world in which any of those actions would not but have a positive effect on you personally. Okay? Because if you've taken the time to gather your thoughts, your work is going to go that much more smoothly, which means you're going to have more personal time. You're going to be less frazzled. You're going to meet your deadlines, more time for pleasure, for fun things. I mean, how is that not a win, right? So that's on the personal note. You know, you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And taking the time to have done something ahead of time means you'll pick up on errors. You'll save costs. Imagine having to pulp a print job and then redo it because you rushed it. If you've taken the time and had the chance to look at the proofs, had time to edit. So there is nowhere in which being deliberate about how you want to do all your work doesn't pay off. You know, we tell our children, do your homework on Friday, Saturday morning at a pinch, so that you can have the rest of the weekend. Right? Otherwise, when you wait till Sunday evening, it's the whole weekend you've not been able to really enjoy yourself, and now you're stressed and harassed, and Monday morning is going to come and your work is not going to be the standard which you want to do. So again, you're modeling the behavior that you want to show other people. That's on the personal note. If you've been able to communicate your business objectives, your brand objectives, your strategic objectives, your team will honestly be able to do the work better because they understand. You're not having to micromanage them. They're not having to check everything, right? You've been able to be organized, to put the structures in place, to communicate the structures tailored to each class of employee or team member. Your work can only be better. And when a motivated workforce, we know what the benefits of those are, right? Now, when you talk about the negative uses of language, or the people who are aware of the weight and the loaded meanings, I was still reading just today about Rwanda and how that was just the thread. I know why it came up. Because the head of the radio station that was critical to the hate speech that went on for the extended period of time before the massacre has finally been found and charged with his own war crimes. I think he was in France. I might be wrong, but he was just indicted at almost 80-something years old. Because they weaponized language to put brother against brother. They dehumanized one tribe. So they were not people, they were cockroaches. And we're sitting here now, and it sounds ludicrous, except that right before our eyes, terrorists are being called bandits. Right? Herdsmen are unknown or known. You know, it's happening in our, to use one of my favorite Nigerian parlance, in our very before, it is going on. Right? The immigrants and the expatriate example, we've all dealt with that in the workplace. You know, a semi-qualified person, by virtue of his skin color or their skin color, is going to be paid multiples of what someone else who's doing the same job. And you have to understand that some of this is structural. And people know. People who write these things, they know what they're doing. It's very deliberate. And they have, I think the word we're using is language can be weaponized. So it is on us. It behooves us to be aware of it, to point it out, and to protest against it in our own little spheres.
So Lara, you were asking to expatiate immigrant and expatriate. I guess all I'll say is, when you think of, close your eyes and think of immigrant, and think of what picture you get in your mind when you think of immigrant, of the word immigrant. Who is the person that comes to mind? And then when you think of the word expatriate, think of who comes to mind as well. And then think of who are the groups of people that are generally described as immigrants, And who are the groups of people that are generally described as expatriates? Even if they come to a country and live there for years, they're still described as expatriates and never as immigrants. And when you start to think about that and you start to kind of drill down, you understand that, okay, this is not an accident. It is actually deliberate. It is intentional. Certain people of a certain color will never be described as expatriates if they move to another country. But other people who move for economic reasons, the same reasons that are described, differently. So the reason it matters is because, like Tolagbe said, words can be weaponized, but also words can be used to shape perception. They're used to kind of subtly shape how you see yourself, how the world sees you, how, so I guess maybe the thing to say as we kind of round up is, when you're reading things, we all try to bring a more critical eye to what we see, what we're reading, and ask questions of why, and then choosing words. Once you start understanding the weightiness of words, then you yourself will be more deliberate or intentional about the words that you choose to use and how you choose to use them. So I'll pause on that point, Talagbe, and we're going to kind of get into the maybe a little bit more fun part. We've been talking quite testy. What is your pet peeve? Okay, we have said all this grammar English. Forget it. There are some things that some people say, no matter how, it's just, I cannot stomach it. It just gets my goat every time. What are some of your pet peeves when it comes
to? So the top two. When people say am instead of I am. Okay.
Please, I'm coming. Use it in a sentence, Tolagbe.
They say I'm hungry. As opposed to I'm hungry. When they write AM instead of I apostrophe M or I dash AM. So that is probably the top. The second is feedback.
Why can't I just say I'm hungry?
Because who is am? What is am? Am is not a word. It's the conjugation of be. Kamakazi. Stop. I'm here. Exactly. Exactly. So that's the first one. The second one is feedbacks. And then now they've remixed it, and now they say I'll feed you back.
I'll feed you back. So like that feedbacks one is a whole kettle of fish, because this thing that people do of adding S to everything. The problem is that feedbacks thing, you see it everywhere. You see it with stuffs. Bring my stuffs. Bring my jewelries. Bring my what are the other things they add? My luggage.
So mass nouns, and you see, I realized, because I actually have a video on this particular topic, right, on my Instagram, and the issue of jewelry, luggage, feedback, equipment, staff,
stuff.
I feel like maybe it's been taken off the curriculum. I have no other. Daryl, I've also done severally. I've actually done that video, and I've explained it.
Please explain it here, because some people may not have seen your video.
Wow. Okay.
Severally, why are people using it wrong? What is the right usage? And why are people using it wrong? What is the
Okay, so several times is often what they mean. Yes. I called you several times, which means I called you repeatedly, right? Severally has a very specific legal meaning, okay? And it's usually to refer to something like liability. So you say someone is jointly, and like two parties are jointly and severally liable. So it's a very specific term. And I don't know how it crept into everyday usage. This, I almost feel like I should look for sponsors to, do a documentary. Let me know if you're listening, on like, how did we get these words? Where did they come from? Why are we using them the way they are? Because severally has worked its way into dictionary. Nigerians have won, and they've got it in the
No,
dictionary now.
and this is the thing, they so often win that after a while you're okay. So this is a spelling issue for me.
Yeah.
Bosom, rest in the bosom of the Lord,
Oh,
and
2 S's.
yes, and I mean at this point I've actually given up because
Focus also has 2 S's now, and I don't know when that
yes,
happened
focused
either.
when they are spelling focused and then they put double S and ed.
Yeah, and then loose and lose, we
Lose.
may have actually
Yeah, we
lost
lost the battle. I
that
think
battle.
that's lose and lose.
Yes.
You see it all the time, and there's some things where you even give up. I'm just like, okay, there's even no. I think they've won.
No, but I stand on this. We will prevail. We will overcome.
Apparently, we will not be cowed. I think that yeah, the would and will. Somebody said would and will, which I will let Salagwe get into a little bit.
Okay, so the will and would thing. Okay. I haven't done the video because it is too long to explain in 2 minutes.
Honestly.
Right? It is. You just can't. Because would is conditional and is in the past tense. Will is very definite and is in the future tense. And that's about what I can say, right?
Yes.
But it is,
I think that's a very simple way. If you don't know it, in fact, say it again, please.
So, will implies, inshallah, by God's grace, this thing is going to happen. That I'll be there, okay? That unless something major happens, I will do it, or it will be done, okay? That's will.
Or it will come to pass.
Exactly. I will go to the office tomorrow. So short of, I don't know, something happening, I'm not waking up tomorrow, I'll go to the office. It's not I would go to the office. If you say I would go, then we're expecting to hear a reason.
A condition.
So,
if
a condition.
If.
Oh no, almost like I would have gone if X. So it's also in the past. Right? You see why it's so this will and would. I have the lesson plan and I have timed it. It's about a 20-minute lesson because we have to go through all the reasons why. And again, it's one of the interesting ones because like I said, this is one of those you remember I talked about how some language is through immersion. Will and would is, it used to be that we didn't know why, we just knew instinctively which to use. And somewhere along the lines, everybody has lost that instinct. And strangely enough, because I checked, will and would, in Yoruba, we have the distinction. And I've asked, Pusala is on a roll.
She's distracted.
No, so Nook and Corner, this is a straight up malaprop. These are malaprops. These are just people just using words wrongly.
Yeah.
Inappropriately.
Every Nook and Kireni.
No, it's even corner.
No, I'm saying but at least the people that are even saying Kireni, they know that it's not corner, it's cranny. But
I like this question. How do you respond to being bullied because of being well spoken? People associate elocution with snobbery. Well, we both talked about examples that we got through as children, you know, mine with Hohova and Kemi with the bow. Honestly, I mean, it's been so long that I feel like I have fully stepped into it and I own it. I'm fortunate, and I think Kemi is also the same. I'm fortunate because I do happen to speak my mother tongue. So honestly, I find in certain places, I'll just unexpectedly switch. And it's so crazy to see how people just calm down. Like, and that's something, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. I find that the minute they hear me speaking in Yoruba,
it diffuses the whole...
Oh, it's like, oh, okay. So she can do both. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You know, like get you a girl who can do both. and suddenly, like, they're calm, right? And then I can switch back, and it's suddenly seen as fine.
You can do the code switching thing. That's what they call it in the US.
Yeah.
Myself,
so that's something that has just happened.
Recent, this myself and
it's not just in Nigeria.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people decided that because this should be Kemi and I, right? That particular sentence should be Kemi and I. I feel like people decided that me and I were too simple, that they needed to give some additional status to the first person pronoun, and they suddenly decided it was myself. I don't know, but I'm seeing that all over the world, not just
Nigeria. Absolutely, I agree with you. Actually, it's all over myself and somebody, went there. But
so kamikaze, just as another thing about this code switching. I'm actually being quite, so with my 6-year-old, we're running an experiment. Because the other day he was saying something, he said something about the mirror. And I was like, no, it's not the mirror, it's a mirror. And then I realized that actually, you know what? That's how we speak here. So we're actually running standard English and Nigerian English as like a separate conversation.
Well,
and I'm letting him know which context in which is appropriate. And but for full context, he's also learning French, right? So for him, and he's learning Yoruba, so it's just like, okay, so it's another dialect. It's a dialect.
And I think sorry.
And I think he's learning to code switch.
Absolutely. And I think being able to code, what I was going to say is I think being able to code switch is actually a critical life skill. So to go back to kamikaze, that's Ruka's question. I think that part of the problem is, when you say people are bullied for, I always try to avoid sounding condescending or patronizing, that I'm not better than anybody else just because I fortunately or by accident.
It's privilege. It's privilege. This is the textbook definition of privilege.
By accident of birth, by privilege, by all of that, that I have a certain, and part of it is probably just a natural predisposition because I love languages anyway, which is why in my home, I think of all my siblings, I'm probably the one who speaks Yoruba best. So I just have a natural predisposition to languages, but I have taught myself from very early on not to think. So even if you're correcting I'm very wary of correcting people anyway, unless we're at work or that I don't, nobody likes a grammar snob.
I know it's all.
Oh, nobody likes
ITK. I know because I've been called some of them.
It's not an attractive. Let's be honest. Let's keep it real. It's not an attractive trait to go around, correcting everybody's English, correcting everybody's grammar. Sometimes look away. Sometimes, day or day. On look. Sometimes day or day. It's not what's your own, unless it's impacting on if it's your child, of course, or if it's you're at work and But other than that, look, and even when you are going to correct, so when I'm correcting, a big part of my job at work is editing. I edit all day long. And when I'm correcting people's written, I try to not, don't break the person's spirits because you are, correcting their English. That's what may sometimes bring about this whole, you're bullied because you are. And the second thing, actually, so when I look at my brothers, when we're growing up, and most Nigerian guys of a certain age are like that, they code switch between speaking proper English and pidgin. When guys get together, they usually speak to themselves in pidgin. They are a group of guys together. You find that most of them are speaking pidgin to each other. It's how they get down, and it's fine. So personally, I don't have any problem with being able to speak pidgin or being able to, to speak Ebonics.
I wish I spoke it. We weren't allowed, and that's what. So that colonial mentality, I wasn't allowed. I
And
would
I
have
have some
loved to
friends,
be able to
and
speak
it's
it.
not. I have some friends. One of my friends, Ifoma Williams. When I speak to Ifoma, half the time we're rapping in pidgin, um, and it's fine. It's all part of the dynamism of language. So I just wanted to say that to Ruka's point. Yes, speak
And there
properly.
had been an earlier point about fluidity of language, and that's
Yes,
absolutely the
a
case,
good
right?
point. Yeah.
There's no one is here, and it's one of the reasons I talk about communicating with clarity. You need to know what to say to get to actually get your point
Point
across.
across.
So if you're gonna have to use some slang to make sure that that's done,
It's all
if you're
part of
going to use
communication.
Nigerian parlance, but all I just want, and the objective with training people is for you to know the difference, to know that what you're saying is non-standard.
Yeah.
And I'm using that as opposed to wrong. It's just not standard. And this is so that in the event that you're working with international clients, or you're sending emails abroad, or you're speaking to people, you should know what is appropriate for which audience. That's all.
And the other thing that you said before, I don't know if you've said it here in this conversation, but we've talked about before, is you have to know the rules in order to be able to break them.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
when you know the rules, then you can break them with abandon, with impunity.
Nobody would ever say that Chimamanda and Professor Wole Soyinka are not. They're both totally proficient in English and Igbo and Yoruba, respectively. And that is one of the things that gives them the facility to paint the pictures that they do. They've got a full grasp. They have a mastery of language. I'm really envious of their accents, by the way, just as an aside, because I love how completely and authentically Nigerian they sound. But, then again, and which goes to the point about no one is saying you need to. There are some handles on Instagram doing all sorts, doing bits and all sorts on improper diction and pronunciation. And I get asked why I don't do that, actually. It's one of the things people ask me, why don't I do videos on it? It's not data, it's data.
It's not.
And I don't do them because there is no right way to sound. And authenticity is key. No, but authenticity is everything. And if you come across as, because you'll see often what happens, Kemi, and you know this and I know this, is you'll start speaking, people aren't sure if you are pretending, right? Maybe first meeting, second meeting, third meeting, they'll be like, so this is how you really are. This is how your phone is always in place.
Always on put the thing down small now.
Exactly. But then they relax because they know they know it's not personal. They know it's real. Right? And that's what I mean. Authenticity is key. So that's why you won't see me. I mean, I run specialized, like short sessions with people. Maybe you are struggling with particular words, or as I said, H factor. We'll talk it through. But even with the H factor thing, I'm sort of, I'm having a rethink because I'm French. All the French people can't say H, and nobody gives them a hard time about it. So I'm unpacking.
When they drop their own H's, it's like,
it's supposed to be sexy. It's supposed to be sexy, and now when we exhaust, it's rise. So I don't know. But I think my problem with it here is people who, when you don't get it, then you also lose the A and the an. That's why they then say an hotel. So maybe that's why you need to know it. So you say a hotel.
So yeah, exactly, and how it then impacts on the rest of your speaking.
Othello gives, but that's happening to all our children. Haven't you heard all of them? They sound like a cross between YouTube and it's just
and CBBS.
And CBBS, Peppa Pig, mixed with PJ Masks. It's all a hot mess now, to be honest.
Everything somebody's distracting me here. Everything to jam. So it's been an amazing conversation, Talagbe. I think I'm just looking at some of the comments. Yeah. Kolo mentality. Absolutely. At the end of the day, I think we'll end where we started, which is that grammar, good grammar is not an end in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a means to
an end.
And that end is to be able to communicate with people, to be able to make the life for yourself that you want, whatever that life looks like, to be able to navigate this world. The question, sorry, yes, I think this is a question Kamikaze had.
I can't find it. What question is it?
No, I put it up. Can you see it?
Oh, okay. So I did have you ever considered working within the journalism industry?
Yeah, that was the question.
I did a short stint on radio earlier this year, actually. I was doing some, how you have these people come on and review like the headlines and newspaper articles and just talk about what's happening in the country. The problem is that with what's happening in the country, when you are just reporting it, JJ, it's as if you have become there is no way right now to read and talk about what's happening in Nigeria without coming across as if you are a critic of some sort. Because all you have to say, and I'll give just a very quick example of one. There was a headline about how at Seme border they found a huge truckloads of calcium carbide, which apparently are used in explosives. So the Nigerian customs, everybody patted themselves on the back and said that they had foiled an attempt to blow up Nigeria. Turns out, and so I just remarked before I had even Googled it, I just said, do you know that I will not be surprised if this calcium carbide is used for something, right? And people are tired of it rotting at the ports in Apapa, and so have just taken it into the Benin border and are now driving it over from Cotonou. Guess what? That's exactly what's happening. They need it for welders, need it for acetylene torches. That's the critical thing. So my point is, you cannot talk about Nigeria without talking about Nigeria. So
tell me you're Nigerian without telling me you're Nigerian.
Exactly. So let me focus on my little space of talking to. If journalists want to come and we can talk about how to write their articles, please, I'm more than happy. But personally, I'm just trying to find my happy, which is not grammatically correct, but you know what I mean.
So, Ruka Kamikaze Smith, I hope that answered your question. I'm going to wrap it up here. It's 8:40. My goodness gracious.
Yeah. I was wondering why I was thirsty.
I know I always have my glass of water. It's a lot of gabbing. But it's been amazing. I think, and I hope that everyone who joined found it an enlightening session. Thank you for coming. Tolagbe, thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your insights. Thank you for making us all a little bit more conscious about the words that we use, how we use them, why we use them. Let me just allow you one moment to just tell people how they can reach you if they want to find out more about the Grammar Ministry, or if they want to, to use your services in one way or the other.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So you can follow TM Grammar, because that handle, that's all it talks about. Tolagbe.com, she's many things, so she has all sorts of interests. But TM Grammar is exclusively focused on the Grammar Ministry. My site is actually just being updated. TM Grammar, that is here. Sure, you've heard. Hurry up. But there's a link in bio to actually, you can book a complimentary short session through there, just to maybe even get a handle of what your needs specifically would be. And then I run ad hoc classes. I put together specific training, whether they're for individuals or organizations. I've worked with schools, small businesses, as I said, parastatals. Everyone needs to communicate. So I'm more than happy to put together, custom material, custom curriculums to just help you achieve curricula. Pick one. Somebody talked about fluidity. No one is saying stay we now say, so that's actually something that has stopped.
Yeah, so pick one. And then again, it goes to, understanding the rules, knowing the rules. And for you to really know, Tolagbe seems to be, is it just me? Or is Tolagbe frozen?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, you went off. Okay, hi.
I'm back.
So I was saying that, again, I think that goes
Yeah.
back to what we were saying about knowing the rules so that you can, how to break them and how to bend them
Exactly.
as needed. Language is fluid. So at some point, okay, maybe they're now saying curriculums versus curricula. If you read widely enough, you begin to understand when something has entered the lexicon
and when something has become archaic.
Exactly. Or something has become hallowed by usage, as we say. But you can't just be all willy-nilly all over the place.
Yeah.
So, know the right words to use, be consistent. If you're going to use that one, then be consistent in using the particular word. But thank you, Tolagbe. Thank you to everyone who joined. If you're not already following me, please do follow me at Kemi Ogunleye. Chrysalis Conversations will be back next Sunday at 7. We're here every Sunday at 7 p.m. with another conversation that hopefully will illuminate and will also inspire. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tolagbe, again. And have a good week, everyone. And see you guys next Sunday at 7 p.m. Follow me at Kemi and follow Tolagbe at TM Grammar.
Grammar.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye.